Well, good morning, Miramar. Hi, it's your host, Tamara G. Welcome to the show. Don't forget, you can check us out on all of our social media. We're at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at City of Miramar. That's Miramar. And today we have a very special guest for Good Morning, Miramar. It is former First Lady of Miramar, Miss Jackie Rosen. Her husband, Harry Rosen, was mayor of Miramar, and we are so happy to have her back. She's going to be talking this morning about a subject that's very dear to her heart. She has taken it on as a personal initiative and project. It's the Florida Initiative for Suicide Prevention Incorporated. And welcome to the show, First Lady, Miss Rosen. How are you, Miss Jackie Rosen?
I'm doing fine, and my heart is still partly in Miramar. Both my children were born there, and unfortunately,
Wow.
I lost my son when I lived there as well. So,
Wow.
my heart is very much part of Miramar.
Miramar. Well, we're so happy to have you joining us today. And we want to talk about the Florida Initiative for Suicide Prevention Incorporated. We know that September is National Suicide Prevention Month, but this is something that happens, of course, all year round. And you just mentioned that this touched you personally. If you don't mind, please share your story.
Yes, in 1986, our son Mitchell, who was 24 at that time, died by suicide in a field in Miramar where he used to play as a child. Um, and so, as a result of that, my husband and I went to support groups, and we went to therapy, because that is one of the most difficult things and type of grief to deal with, not only because it was a child, but it was also suicide. And if you think back to that day, nobody ever talked about it. It was a quiet thing that everybody was quiet about. We were quite open about it. As a matter of fact, it was in the newspapers in Miramar, and we got calls from, you can't believe how many people who had said to us that their aunt died, their mother died, their son died, their husband died by suicide, and they never talked about it. And so they were so glad that we were open. So we started a support group for parents who had lost children by any means. In that support group, there were 5 families that had all lost a child 24 years of age by suicide. And we got together and decided there had to be something done for those parents and for everybody that loses somebody by suicide, because there was so
Mm-hmm.
little available then. And so
Right.
we formed eventually the Florida Initiative for Suicide Prevention. We originally were part of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and then we became our own organization in 1991.
Okay.
So, excuse me, 2001. And
Right.
so,
2001. Okay.
yeah, 2001. Um, and for the last, God knows how many years I've been involved. Yesterday was the anniversary of my son's death, and it was a difficult day still. It's still a
Wow.
difficult day. And that's what we know about survivors of suicide. It never goes away. We just learn how to make something good out of it, like I think I have done, or we learn how to live with it and reestablish the relationship with our loved one in a different way. And those ways can be many different formats, because everybody grieves totally differently and independently.
Right. And
So,
Jackie, I did not know that. I had no idea that when we scheduled this interview with you, that it was going to be, close to the date of your son's suicide. And like you said, even since it's been 1986, you have lost a child. You've lost a loved one that can never be replaced. Did you all know that he was even thinking of
yes,
suicide?
yes, and we were doing,
Okay.
quote, all the right things. We had him in
Okay.
therapy, he was on medication. We didn't let him out of our sight. Either my husband was with him or I was with him. We went to sleep and he left the house. So we needed to sleep sometimes. And it was
Right.
on a Jewish holiday when he did it. And we waited for him to come home, and he never came home. So, one of the things that I feel was very important was everybody knew us in Miramar, and
Mhm.
all the police did, and the police that found my son. So it was very personal. to everybody in our community when it happened. And that was
Hmm.
important to us because they helped us get through it by acknowledging that that's what happened. And that's what started our big, big effort to make it different about suicide. In the
Right.
last,
And I
go ahead.
go ahead. And I was going to say, no, no. And I know you just said, you guys had him on therapy with therapy. You had him on medications. I'm sure there is still probably is an extreme amount of guilt or thinking, what could I have done differently? But you said you did everything. It'd be different if y'all just left him to his own devices and figure it out your best way you can. But with professional help and with medication, there, I just don't know if anybody could ever not feel like, could I have done something else if I had just talked to him one more time, if I had just hugged him one more time, something like that.
That's
So that's where you guys help.
that's part of the grieving process that is so difficult, the guilt. The only guilt that we had was we went to sleep. That was all. And you got to sleep. I mean, he was in bed
Right.
watching TV with us before he went and did that. So
Right.
the guilt we hope to erase because are you guilty if somebody in your family dies of cancer?
No. No.
Well,
But
people
suicide,
who
you
die
feel guilty.
suicide die of a brain illness. And so it's like I say, please don't ever say committed. Committed is doing something against the law. Would you ever
Mhm.
say somebody committed cancer? It's an illness.
No.
That is one of the most important messages we have to get out there. This is an illness that we have to treat as an illness with none of the stigma attached and be
Mhm.
able to say, look, this happened in our family. I have to educate everybody in our family because it does run in families. Because brain disorders
Wow.
run in families, just like
Wow.
cancer runs in families.
Yes.
It's no
Wow.
different. There is a big thing with the DNA involved with this, and so if
Right.
you
And
know,
how your brain works.
right, and if you know somebody in your family, you have to educate them. You have to be honest with them so that they know what to do if they see it in somebody else in the family. And that is a big problem getting people to do that.
Right. Well, speaking of that, for the folks who are just tuning in to Good Morning Miramar, we are speaking this morning with Jackie Rosen, former First Lady of Miramar. Her husband was Mayor Harry Rosen. She is the CEO of the Florida Initiative for Suicide Prevention Incorporated. It was started because of their son's suicide in 1986. And we wanted to bring this to the forefront because, again, we just mentioned September is National Suicide Prevention Month, but this is something that happens every month. And with COVID and the isolation, I am sure that you all are finding out that there are more people out there who are contemplating this than maybe in the past, simply because they just feel like there's no hope, like they'll never get out of this cycle that we're in right now of having to be at home, having to stay away from people, not being social, not having money. You lost your job and you don't know what's going to come next. So tell us a little bit about that, Jackie.
Well, we're seeing much more people that are calling us that have lost a loved one by suicide. It used to be 4 a month, now it's 3 a week. I mean, I was talking to people at 211, and they said that their calls for suicide have gone up 25% in the last few months. Um, we are seeing a tremendous feeling of there is no hope. And that's what it's all about. And with suicide, there are three phases of suicide that we deal with there's prevention, intervention, and postvention. Prevention, we have programs, we would go out and we educate. We have programs in the schools, the Hope Sunshine Club, which is difficult to administer right now with what's going on with schools, where we have a curriculum to teach the kids how to deal with problems and so forth, and they help each other. We have our trauma groups now, where people who have experienced trauma from COVID or any other means like MSW or Deerfield. They can come
Mhm.
to a group and talk about it with a professional with no cost to them. It's free. Um,
That's amazing.
and we also have the person to person reaching out to the entire community. We go out with outreach and all kinds of things, and we serve on all kinds of committees, including the state suicide prevention office. We were
Mhm.
involved in having that office be created in 2007. And so we've done a lot to try and get the information out there and help. The intervention, and that's teaching people what to do when they think somebody is in trouble, how, what to ask them, to stay with them, not to leave them alone, to help them form a plan to get help, and so forth. And there are 5 basic questions that you ask somebody that you think is in trouble. One of which is, are you thinking of hurting yourself? The next one is, are you thinking of dying or suicide? The third one is, do you have a plan? The fourth one is, do you have what you need to carry out that plan? And the fifth one is, have you decided when you're carrying out that plan? Yes to any of those questions. You need to get help. Don't leave them alone immediately. And of course, the
Amazing.
third part, did you want to ask a question?
No, no, no. You said the third part is the postvention, right?
Mention, which is those people that are suffering after a loss by suicide. And we have
Mhm.
support groups that are also free for people who have lost a loved one by suicide. Right now, everything is virtual. Um, and we have package that we send out. We give them referrals. We talk to them on the phone. We don't do therapy, but we get them to the things that they need to have in order to. And our support groups are run by professionals. So it's the whole picture that we deal with every single day, trying to let the world know that suicide can be prevented, how to intervene if they know of somebody who's in trouble, and how to help those that have lost a loved one by suicide. And some of the things that you should and shouldn't say to somebody that's in those positions.
Oh, well, listen, you all are doing an excellent job at the Florida Initiative for Suicide Prevention, Inc., because that everything you just said, those 3 steps there, the prevention, the intervention, and the postvention, everybody needs that. Just to talking to you off mic, and this was when we set this up, we talked about what is happening in the Black and Brown communities. As you can see, Andy is part of the Brown community, the Hispanic community. He's our producer. And of course, I'm part of the African American Black community. But it is happening more in our communities. And when I tell you nobody wants to talk about it, Jackie, nobody. It is the secret. It's almost like the crazy uncle in the back room. They don't ever want to talk about that person. But in particular with suicide, oh, he just died. Well, how did he die? They never say. And it's one of those things where it's almost like it's embarrassing, which I don't know where that comes from, but that it's embarrassing that you had a family member that killed themselves.
And that's what I was talking about talking to people about how to see it, what to do, and not to feel the stigma that's involved. And again, getting rid of that word committed removes that stigma.
Mhm.
But the Black and Brown community and the Latino community are having
Mhm.
major upticks in the amount of suicides, especially in Black youth. And um, it has gone up 75% in the last 5 years. And that's because
Wow.
partially nobody talks about it. That is the reason
Yeah.
that people don't give them an option. There's a wonderful video that the United Way had on of Black men in a barber shop talking about how
Mhm.
mental health is being treated in their communities, how nobody talks about it, how they need to talk about it. And that goes the same thing with every other group of people that don't talk about it. So we need to get out there and get people like me to come and talk at your church. Get people
Okay. Okay.
to come and talk at your schools. And as soon as we get over this part with the virtual, but I've been doing these things virtually because that needs to be done. So churches, organizations, business organizations, there's a high rate of suicide amongst lawyers, dentists, I mean, professional people, and especially in this time when things are going so bad, and people
Hmm.
are losing their ability to earn a living or keep their homes. So
Yeah.
we must make this very visible that suicide is an illness that affects everybody everywhere at some time.
And how can people get more information on the Florida Initiative for Suicide Prevention Incorporated? How can they get in touch with you? Go to your website.
They can
Let
go to
us know.
our website at fiscalandline.org. My email is jrosen@fiscalandline.org. They can call our phone number at 954-384-0344, and we will be glad to talk to them and send them information. Every person that calls us that is a survivor or someone looking for information, we send them out a whole package of information that they can read over a period of time at the different parts of their thing. The other thing is, as a result of my process of healing, I couldn't sleep. I went through all the things of breathing, and I wrote, and it came out in poems. And those poems
Okay.
contained a lot of hints on how to deal with your grief for different groups like mothers, fathers, children, siblings, so forth. And it's called The Butterfly on My Shoulder. And I usually have a butterfly on my shoulder, but I didn't put it on today since my shirt has a butterfly on my shoulder.
I see the butterflies. Yes, very nice. I love the butterflies. Yes.
That is because my son would come home every night and rub my shoulders and say, "Mom, how was your day?" And butterflies
Oh,
signify, as which I've loved them since I was a child and collected them, the change from one form to another. So our loved one, after they leave us, that energy stays alive. They're just in a different form. And I tell my survivors to find something that brings happiness to you with your relationship with that person. And use that symbol, as I did, the butterfly, to
right.
connect
Hmm.
with that person. And so my friends, when they see a butterfly, say, "Hi, Mitchell, how are you?" And so do
I
I.
like that, Jackie. I love that. Thank you
I
so
will,
much for sharing with us today.
and when I walk into my house and there's a butterfly flying by the door, I know he's
You
there.
say, hi, Mitchell.
I know.
Hi, Mitchell. Exactly. Thank you so much, Jackie Rosen. She is the CEO of the Florida Initiative for Suicide Prevention, Inc. If you want more information, you can always go online to FISP, that's F as in Frank, ISP, online.org. The Florida Initiative for Suicide Prevention, their phone number is 954-384-0344. Thank you so much, our former First Lady of Miramar, Jackie Rosen. We certainly appreciate you coming on today. And as always, it's right here in Miramar.